I used to think loyalty was a simple thing. Show up, work hard, and stand by the people who needed you. That belief became my compass the day I walked through the revolving glass doors of Weston and Hale, a mid-sized consulting firm that always felt like it was teetering between greatness and collapse. I was 29, still paying off student loans, and I knew this job wasn't just another paycheck. It was supposed to be a career, a home, maybe even a family. From the very beginning, I gave it everything I had. Long nights bled into early mornings. Weekends became spreadsheets, late-night calls, and quiet sacrifices no one ever saw. So when the company hit a rough patch, clients pulling out profits, shrinking layoffs looming, I made a decision I thought would prove my worth beyond doubt. I volunteered to take a pay cut. Not because I didn't need the money, I absolutely did, but because I believed in the company, in the work we were doing, in the dream we were chasing together. At the time, my boss, Daniel Hale, the CEO, looked at me with something like gratitude and relief. He wasn't much older than me, maybe mid-30s, with the kind of sharp mind that could calculate risk and opportunity in seconds. More importantly, he seemed to believe in people. And when he shook my hand and said, "Thank you, Sarah. This means more than you know," I thought that meant my place in the company was secure. I thought loyalty was a shield. I couldn't have been more wrong. See, Daniel had a silent shadow in the office. His mother. She had no official title, no listed position, not even a desk, but her presence was everywhere, lingering in the hallways, whispering in the boardroom, dropping hints and questions that made people second-guess themselves. Employees smiled politely when she walked by, but behind closed doors, everyone knew she had more influence than anyone else on payroll. She didn't like me. I never knew exactly why. Maybe I worked too closely with her son. Maybe my ideas got more attention than she thought they deserved. Or maybe I just didn't fit her vision of who belonged by Daniel's side in business. At first it was subtle, a raised eyebrow when I presented numbers at meetings, a comment about how young people don't understand sacrifice. I brushed it off. After all, she wasn't technically my boss. But over time, I realized she had Daniel's ear in a way none of us could compete with. And as the company's struggles deepened, I started to sense her gaze on me grow heavier, sharper, as if every missed deal, every delayed payment, every ounce of red ink on the balance sheets could somehow be traced back to me. I tried to ignore it. I told myself that actions spoke louder than suspicion. After all, I had just secured the early stages of a massive client deal worth nearly $500 million. The project was still fragile, still in negotiation, but it was real. I thought that would silence every doubt. I thought numbers would speak where loyalty failed. But I underestimated her. I underestimated what happens when influence, suspicion, and unchecked power collide. And though I didn't know it yet, the choice I made to trust, to stay quiet, to keep giving, was about to cost me everything. The week Daniel left for an overseas business trip, the office felt different. Lighter, but not in a good way. It was as if a storm cloud had rolled in, heavy and expectant, and everyone was waiting for the downpour. Without Daniel's steady hand steering the ship, the air grew thick with whispers and side glances. And at the center of it all was his mother. She didn't waste time. The very morning he boarded his flight to Singapore, she was in the office walking the halls like she owned the place. She paused at my desk longer than usual, her eyes scanning the files stacked neatly beside my laptop, her lips curving into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Busy, I see," she said. "Yes, ma'am," I replied, forcing a polite smile. "We're preparing the next phase for the Continental Energy deal." She murmured, almost as if the name of the client left a sour taste in her mouth. Then, with a tone so casual, it was almost cruel, she added, "Daniel tells me you're taking quite the lead on that project. Don't you think that's—" Risky, I wanted to defend myself to explain that this deal worth nearly $500 million could be the company's lifeline. That I had been the one to bring the client to the table, to nurture the relationship, to build trust where others had failed. But I bit my tongue, because with her explanations never mattered. She'd already made up her mind. By Friday, she called me into Daniel's office, except this time Daniel wasn't sitting behind the desk. She was. Papers were spread across the polished mahogany surface, but none of them were about the Continental deal. They were about me. I've reviewed your performance, Sarah. She began, folding her hands in front of her as if she were chairing a tribunal. And I have serious concerns. The company's finances have declined under your watch. Your strategies are unproven, and frankly, your presence here has become disruptive. The words struck like blows, each one colder than the last. I wanted to remind her that I had taken a pay cut when others wouldn't, that I had worked nights and weekends to keep projects alive, that I had secured the only deal capable of pulling the company back from the brink. But when I opened my mouth, nothing came out. Instead, I listened as she gave me a choice that wasn't really a choice. "You'll submit your resignation today," she said calmly. "It's for the good of the company. We can't afford further mistakes." I sat there frozen, my heart pounding in my ears. Every instinct screamed at me to fight to stand up to tell her she was wrong. But I didn't. I don't know if it was exhaustion, loyalty, or the futility of arguing with someone who had already judged me guilty without trial. I simply nodded, rose from the chair, and walked out. That afternoon, I packed my things in silence. My coworkers hovered nearby, some too nervous to speak, others offering quick, sympathetic glances that only made the ache sharper. The deal documents I had been working on still lay unfinished on my desk. The $500 million project that could save Weston and Hale was now suspended in limbo, leaderless. As I carried the box of my belongings out of the building, I caught one last glimpse of her watching me from the glass office above. Her expression wasn't triumphant. It was something else, something unreadable, like she was daring the world to prove her wrong. I didn't know then that the world was about to do exactly that. Daniel returned from Singapore 3 days later, jet-lagged but energized, carrying folders filled with fresh opportunities. He had no idea what he was about to walk into. When he stepped into the office that Monday morning, he expected updates on Continental Energy, maybe even good news about the contract being finalized. Instead, he was met with silence. A silence so sharp, it cut through the usual hum of ringing phones and clacking keyboards. "Where's Sarah?" he asked his assistant. The woman shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting toward the closed door of his office, the door where his mother was likely waiting. She resigned on Friday." The words knocked the breath out of him. Resigned, no, impossible. Sarah wasn't the type to walk away. She was relentless, stubborn in the best ways, and the only person he trusted to anchor a deal of this size. Daniel dropped his bag on the floor and stormed into his office. His mother was there, sipping tea from a porcelain cup, as if nothing were amiss. "What happened?" he demanded. "She wasn't the right fit," she said, coolly setting the cup down. "You'll thank me later. That girl was reckless. She would have dragged this company deeper into the mud." "She secured Continental Energy," Daniel snapped. "Do you have any idea what's at stake? That contract could keep this firm alive for the next decade." His mother's face remained unreadable, but a flicker of doubt crossed her eyes. Still, she didn't back down. "If the deal is solid, it will stand without her. If it collapses, then it was never real to begin with." But Daniel knew better. He had seen Sarah build that relationship from nothing, brick by brick. She had sat through endless calls, late-night strategy sessions, countless negotiations to get them to the edge of signing. She was the linchpin. Without her, The deal wasn't just at risk, it was doomed. By midweek, his fears were confirmed. Continental Energy called to express concerns. They had noticed Sarah's sudden absence and were unsettled. She had been their point of contact, their reassurance that Weston and Hale was the right choice. Now, with her gone, their confidence wavered. If she's no longer involved, the client said bluntly, we may need to reconsider our options. Those words haunted Daniel long after the call ended. Options. He knew what that meant, competitors circling like sharks, eager to snatch away the $500 million project that could redefine the company's future. He confronted his mother again, this time his voice edged with something close to desperation. You don't understand. This wasn't just an employee. Sarah was holding this entire project together. Without her, we stand to lose everything. But she only folded her arms, her expression steely. If the company's survival depends on one woman, then perhaps it doesn't deserve to survive at all. The statement left him stunned. For the first time in his career, Daniel felt powerless. He had trusted his instincts, trusted Sarah, and now she was gone. The deal, their lifeline, was slipping through his fingers, and he didn't know how to stop it. That night, as he sat alone in his office, the weight of realization hit him. His mother's decision wasn't just a miscalculation. It was sabotage, whether she meant it or not. And unless he found a way to bring Sarah back or salvage what was left, the empire his father had built, the company he had sworn to protect, was about to crumble. The conference room was supposed to be a place of strategy, not battlefield. Yet by Thursday morning, it had turned into exactly that. Continental Energy's executive team sat at one end of the long table, their polished suits and crisp expressions hiding the storm beneath. Daniel sat at the other end, his hands clenched tightly, while his senior managers fidgeted in uneasy silence. The words hit like a gavel. We appreciate the effort Weston and Hale has put into this proposal, their lead negotiator said. But without Ms. Sarah Williams overseeing the project, we have doubts about your ability to execute. We're entertaining offers from 2 of your competitors. Unless she's back on board, I'm afraid we'll have to move forward elsewhere. The room spun. Daniel felt the weight of every eye on him, clients, colleagues, even the skeptical glances of his own staff. He opened his mouth to respond, but for once no words came. How could he explain that the very person they wanted had been forced out by his own mother? Give us until tomorrow, Daniel finally said, his voice low but steady. I'll get you an answer. When the meeting adjourned, he didn't return to his office. He went straight to the corner suite where his mother sat as if she owned the place, scrolling through emails she had no business reading. You need to fix this, he snapped, slamming the door behind him. She looked up calmly. Lower your voice, Daniel. This isn't you. No, he shot back. This isn't you. Do you realize what you've done? They want Sarah. They don't want me. They don't want anyone else in this company. They want her. And because of your obsession, because of your pride, we're about to lose the biggest contract in our history. Her lips thinned. That girl manipulated her way into your trust. She made herself indispensable so she could hold this company hostage. I saved you from that. Daniel's laugh was sharp and bitter. Saved me. You've doomed us. She didn't make herself indispensable, I did. I put her there because she was the only one capable of pulling this off. And she delivered. She brought in Continental when no one else could. For the first time, his mother's composure faltered. Her eyes flickered uncertain. If she was truly as loyal as you believe, she wouldn't have walked away. She didn't walk away. Daniel said, his voice breaking with the weight of truth. You pushed her out. You forced her to resign. And now, unless we get her back, everything we've built will collapse. My father's legacy, this firm, the livelihoods of everyone working here, it all burns because you couldn't see past your own suspicion. Silence filled the room. She stared at him, her jaw tight, but there was no defense left to give. The realization hung heavy. Her actions meant to protect had placed everything in jeopardy. Daniel stepped closer, his tone now cold and final. "If we lose this deal, it's on you, not me, not Sarah, you." And with that, he turned and walked out, leaving her alone in the suite, the walls suddenly closing in. For the first time, she felt not power, but fear, the kind that comes when you realize your influence has destroyed the very thing you meant to protect. As Daniel left the corner suite, the weight of his words echoed in the silence behind him. For the first time, his mother had no reply, only the stunned realization of what she had done. He walked down the hallway with heavy steps, every pair of eyes turning toward him, searching for answers he didn't have. Outside, the city pulsed as if nothing had changed, but inside Weston and Hale, the foundation was already cracking. By the next morning, the cracks would spread into fractures no one could ignore. By Friday morning, the cracks were visible everywhere. Continental Energy had not returned calls. Their legal team sent a polite but curt email requesting a pause in all negotiations while they evaluated alternative partnerships. For a firm like Weston and Hale, pause was just a polite word for goodbye. Daniel sat in his office staring at the screen, the words blurring together. Outside his door, employees moved like ghosts. The buzz of confidence that had once filled the building was gone, replaced by the uneasy hush of people wondering if their jobs would still exist in a month. Every whispered conversation in the hallways felt like another nail in the coffin. His mother entered quietly, as though her footsteps had lost their authority overnight. She carried a folder in her hand, but when she placed it on his desk, it was empty. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice less certain than he had ever heard it. "Perhaps we acted too quickly." Daniel looked up, his eyes sharp. "We didn't act too quickly." "You did." She flinched but pressed on. "I thought I was protecting you, protecting the company. That girl, I saw her as a threat. Someone who could replace you, undermine you. I didn't want to see you dependent on her." Daniel leaned back, his exhaustion giving way to something colder. "You weren't protecting me. You were protecting yourself. From what I don't even know. Pride, fear. You turned the one person keeping us alive into the enemy. And now Continental is gone." The words settled heavily between them. She opened her mouth to reply, but closed it again, the truth too heavy to spin. For the first time, she looked small, no longer the commanding presence who whispered in hallways and bent the company to her will. She looked like a woman who realized she had burned her own house down. Later that afternoon, an emergency board meeting was called. The directors grilled Daniel with questions he had no answers for. What happened to Sarah? Why wasn't the Continental deal secured? Why had his mother intervened in company operations at all? Each question drove the knife deeper. For years, his leadership had been enough to silence doubt. Now doubt was everywhere. And in the back of the room, his mother sat silently, her eyes fixed on the polished table, unable to meet anyone's gaze. The reality was undeniable. Her decision had cost them more than a contract. It had cost them credibility, trust, and perhaps their future. When the meeting ended, Daniel lingered behind, staring out the window at the skyline he had once dreamed of conquering. His mother approached quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't realize," she said, the words trembling. "I didn't realize what she meant to this company. What she meant to you." Daniel closed his eyes. "You didn't want to realize. And now, we may lose everything." The silence that followed was not the silence of power, but of regret, thick, suffocating, irreversible. For the first time, his mother understood the true weight of her interference. She hadn't saved the company. She had shattered it. And somewhere beyond those walls, Sarah, the woman she had dismissed as a liability, was carrying the one thing Weston and Hale needed most, the trust of the very client they were about to lose forever. The following week passed in slow motion like a nightmare no one could wake from. Continental Energy officially announced their decision they were withdrawing from negotiations with Weston and Hale. The press release was clinical, but the damage was devastating. Stockholders panicked, rival firms celebrated, and inside the office the air was heavy with defeat. Years of effort, the legacy of Daniel's father, and the sacrifices of employees who had poured themselves into this company, gone with a single press release. Daniel stood in the lobby the morning the news broke, watching employees trickle in with pale faces and downcast eyes. Some wouldn't last the month. Layoffs were inevitable now. The thought tore at him. He wasn't just losing a contract, he was losing people, families, livelihoods. His mother arrived later that day, but she didn't sweep through the halls as before. She moved quietly, almost invisibly, her once commanding presence reduced to shadows. When she finally entered Daniel's office, he didn't look up from the stack of termination notices he was reviewing. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I was wrong." He let the silence stretch before answering. "It's too late." She sank into the chair across from him, tears gathering in her eyes. For all her control, all her influence, she was powerless now. "I thought I was protecting you," she murmured again, clinging to the same defense she had used before. "I didn't realize." "No," Daniel interrupted, his tone sharp but tired. "You didn't want to realize. You wanted control, no matter the cost. And now we've paid it." Her tears fell, then silent but relentless. It was the first time Daniel had ever seen her break. But there was no satisfaction in it, only grief. That evening, long after the building emptied, Daniel sat alone at his desk. He thought of Sarah, her steady determination, her quiet sacrifices, the way she had carried the weight of the Continental deal when no one else believed it possible. He thought of how easily she had walked away when forced, how she hadn't argued or begged. She had simply left because she knew loyalty wasn't always rewarded. He realized then that she had been the embodiment of what Weston and Hale was supposed to stand for: resilience, dedication, vision. And without her, the company was just another empty shell in the cutthroat world of business. For the first time in his career, Daniel felt powerless not because of markets or competitors, but because of betrayal from within his own walls. And he knew he might never repair the damage. Months later, as Weston and Hale shrank and limped through restructuring, rumors spread that Sarah had joined another firm, one of their competitors. The same firm that had picked up Continental Energy's $500 million contract. Daniel couldn't blame her. In fact, part of him was relieved. She deserved better. She deserved to be somewhere. Her loyalty was more than just a line item, somewhere her sacrifices weren't mistaken for weakness. As for his mother, she lived with the quiet weight of what she had done. No amount of influence could erase the truth her pride had cost them everything. And Daniel, standing in the ruins of what once was, understood the hardest lesson of all. A company isn't built on numbers or contracts. It's built on people. Lose the wrong one and you risk losing everything.